For about 15 years, I've been building and working to beat a backlog of games that are important or impactful or meaningful to me in one way or another. And as that's kind of shifted, I've built a spreadsheet to assist with that, but along with that, maintaining a backloggery as well for the past 13 years. So almost that whole time period, too. And I wanted to finally take time to share this with anybody who might be interested in seeing. Um, I finally got pushed over the edge to do this video because I uh, was watching a video by a quality individual who was sharing like the 30 games she beat last year and ranking them in a tier list. And I wanted to do something like that for a long time. And I'm finally finding people on the YouTube space who are just like, sharing their thoughts on their gaming experiences. And that's just something I personally value a lot and really enjoy. And watching your videos, like, this is what I've really wanted to do. There's so many other folks that I've been watching for, some of them for years. People like her only for the past 6 months or so, but just really enjoying hearing a person just talk about what's in their collection, what they think of what they've beaten, what they want to beat. It really helps inform some of my own decisions, and I just like generally love listening to that kind of thing. So man, for years, Happy Console Gamer has been a mainstay, just his like video game check-ins and some of his reviews. And then I discovered through him Fem Trooper, who also does something similar to what I want to share today, which is kind of planning for a new year in terms of what you want to do. What games you'd like to beat for that new year. And then Quality Individual or Ballology is the other one. She shared a spreadsheet of how she kind of tracks and, what she'd like to beat as well as her collection. And I just thought, I do something similar and have been doing something for quite some time. There's so many other folks that I probably haven't mentioned that I follow. One more actually that I really enjoy, Blinkum, who I actually discovered through Backloggery. And he posts videos occasionally on YouTube, but recently did like a top 10 of games that he beat last year. So I just love those kinds of videos and wanted to contribute what I could in that space here. So to that end, what we're looking at here, this is the remaining games to be beaten in my personal backlog collection. Now, I think when it comes to a backlog, there's a few, I think you should think about what you're collecting for and what you are hoping to achieve, right? So for me, the collection of games that I've got are specifically games that I just have kind of sitting in my brain as a game that I want to beat. Like, I want to roll credits on them. I want to have an experience with them specifically. And if a game isn't good enough or isn't, something that I'm that interested, it's either not going to make the list or I'll cut it from the list or whatever. It's always fluid is my point. And I think that's something that is important for people to try and get comfortable with, because I think it's really easy to get kind of stuck in yourself and create these rigid rules for, like, how you want to beat your games that you've got or whatever the case may be. And I think people, on Book Talk and booktubers, whatever, like, have a similar thing with books. And I'm sure similar things exist for people who want to listen to a lot of albums and watch a lot of movies, all that sort of stuff. Gaming is probably my main hobby. I do watch a lot of movies, listen to a lot of music and stuff too, but gaming is kind of my like daily thing that I do to relax or for personal enjoyment. And so I built this collection up, games that I'd like to beat. So what we have here is the games left. This is just what the title of the game is. We have the system. I think I've put here the system actually that I plan to play it on. So if I have like a virtual copy of something on a Wii or through like a compilation, that console will be listed here. Actually, you can see like Echo Junior and Golden Axe. These are not PS2 games or Genesis games, but I have a Genesis collection that I plan to play them on. Now, the next thing of consideration here, I think this is one of the things that I think Orbology had on hers, which I think is an important thing for you to consider if you're interested. I'd like to beat my collection one day, right? Like, my goal is to be able to say, the games that I wanted to play, I beat them. You know, I'm going to have to say I'm not going to be able to beat every game in the world that I may want to beat, even tangentially. But if it's in the collection, the intention is to beat it, right? So there may be some series that aren't represented here because they don't own the game, because they just haven't pushed to that level where I want to beat them, or I just don't think that I'm going to be able to beat them or get to them at some point. And you just have to accept that as a human being. You know, we only have so much time. So that's what this is really here to help with. So hours short and hours long. The idea here is, you know, how long to beat is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's a fantastic resource. But I think that it doesn't quite paint the picture of how much time you're really going to spend on a game. And I've just noticed this over years of playing my own games and then seeing how much time I've spent on certain games, and then, uh, you know, realizing like, hey, this doesn't actually quite match up here. So what I typically do for these two columns is I give myself, look, if things go well and I'm really progressing on this game, here is a column that tells me like how long it might take on the short end. But if this game takes me a little long, some parts are too challenging, or whatever the case may be, here's a longer estimation. And I tried to give myself a range there. And I'll show you what I do with that at the end and why that's kind of relevant and important for planning for, you know, what you want to play over the course of a year. So what I recommend doing, I do recommend checking out How Long to Beat. I think it's a great resource. You know, you just search up the title of the game, How Long to Beat, and get yourself an idea of about how long this game is. Then the next thing I recommend you doing is going to YouTube, looking up a long play of the game. Now, the thing about long plays is that long plays are often going to be sort of somebody kind of optimizing in a lot of cases. It's not going to represent and show all the, you know, the stumbles and the, where do I go? Do I go here? Do I do this? Or whatever the case may be. You know, but I still think it's another data point that you should consider when you're trying to get an idea of like, how long is this realistically going to take me to beat this collection. The next thing I recommend in general is just, if you're a gamer who's been gaming for a while, and you have some experience, you know how you play some of these types of games. So look, we don't all play a Mega Man game as efficiently or effectively as everybody else, right? So maybe by, you know, a really good gamer standard, they could pick up this Mega Man Extreme game on 3DS and plow through it in, you know, 3 to 4 hours or something. But I like to make sure I pad myself a little bit, because again, the goal is one day to be able to say, I beat this collection, or to at least have that feeling and sensation of going through all these different gaming experiences that you might really want to. And if you know that some of these games take a little bit longer, I pad my numbers out a little bit here to give myself a range. I try to do in increments of 5. You know, you can do whatever you want if you want to use this method or not, to give yourself an idea of like, how realistic is it to actually beat your collection, to do the math on it. And you know, I think that by doing that, you know, you give yourself a realistic shot of kind of, like I said, you're going to be able to plan out your year and say, okay, here's a shorter game, here's a longer game. And I'll scroll down a little bit more to the bottom here. You can see I've got it actually ranked by the hours long that I would estimate it takes. You know, some ranges, hey, here's one that's a 20-hour range. It's a JRPG, Shadow Hearts from the New World. I don't know how long that could take me. How Long to Beat might say it's 45 hours or 40 hours or whatever, but I may not be able to get through it in that long. I may explore too much, you know, too much for, you know, somebody who's just trying to, you know, chug through and beat the game or whatever. So I think if you know yourself, make sure you give yourself some of that leeway to say, like, look, this How Long to Beat may say this takes 40 hours, but I play RPGs in this way, or I play platformers in this way, or whatever the case may be, or like rhythm games are a little bit of a challenge for me, or, you know, maybe it's shorter too. Like I pad my games out for how many hours I estimate them to take on the long end, but hey, maybe they will take that shorter range. So that's one thing here to take a look at. Now, the stages is something that I added for like traditional platformers, because I found that depending on the difficulty of the game, traditional platformers, they may uh, it's helpful to know how many stages you're going to have to deal with, depending on, how long those stages are, how long they typically take a person. So just an additional data point. Doesn't really factor into anything, but it helps a little bit. Um, when you're figuring out maybe like your length, you've got this many more stages to deal with. The difficulty is one that I don't use as much as I used to, but I used to try and rate the game 1 to 5, how difficult I think it would be. Again, this kind of factors into how long you think it might take you, because if it's a 3, that's like an average difficulty. 1 and 2 is on the easier side. 4 and 5 would ideally, you'd say, be on the more difficult side. So if you're going to play, I don't know, a Souls game or something, you give it a 5, and uh, yeah, typically folks, like I said, say they could beat this game in 40, 60 hours. But no, I think I'm going to put 70, 80 hours just to get past some of the more difficult parts. And the last one is genre. This helps with kind of planning out your year to try and, get some balance. Sometimes, yeah, you're in a mood where you just want to do JRPG after JRPG, and sometimes you're in a mood where you want to do some platformers or whatever. Have a mixture. I have kind of made up some of my own genres for what I think some of these things kind of more represent as far as an experience. So, take that with a grain of salt. Use your own genres if you want to. And the last thing is, if there's a multiplayer option, basically, maybe you might end up playing a game like Golden Axe is a game I might be able to play with somebody. And so I mark that because I know, hey, this is a game, if I wanted to filter by, A to Z here, and then go out to all of my, full games here, then, you could see, actually, it's a minor mistake there. But you can see like, hey, this is somebody I could find somebody if they, be willing to play with me, couch co-op typically in my case. And, again, another different type of experience. So that kind of covers this whole part of the sheet. So these are games that are unbeaten, that are in the collection. And I'm going to show you down here. So this is where everything kind of comes together. This is crazy, but look, if you want to beat the collection, this is a goal. This is something that you'd like to do one day. This might be helpful for you to get an idea of how realistic it is, because depending on how many games you have, it may not be that realistic. So what we've done here is we have a grand total that's calculated of all the number of hours it would theoretically take to beat all these games. And then below that, it is divided by 2 and divided again by 365. So the reason for that is because in my lifestyle and the way that I live, I can usually play a couple hours a day. That's, on average. Sometimes I'm able to play for, much longer, but then I have days where I don't have any time actually, and I'm not going to be able to play at all. So, just on average, that's about the amount of time I have to play. So your mileage is going to vary on that. This actually represents like basically the number of years that you may take to potentially beat this collection. Maybe some people don't want to know this information. I find it relevant and interesting because look, if I'm going to play this whole collection and actually beat all these games that I say I want to play, yeah, I'm going to be about 60. Like, that's an interesting thing to know. I've been playing games, like I said, for the past 15 years. If I thought that things were going to change and my lifestyle was going to change, and I couldn't keep up playing 2 hours a day, and that was just not something that I wanted to do, maybe something would be different. But right now, that's where things currently stand. These on the bottom, a little less relevant, but just some interesting stuff. This is games that are kind of like in their hour range, how many games that I have that are sub 20 hours, in their 20s, 30s, estimated range on the long end again. And then this is what's the average length of the game for the whole collection. So on average, each game in the collection would take me about a 30-hour range, which is about a couple weeks or so. And then hours long, like you see there is, using the longer numbers, the longer estimation. So finally, with all that there, and you can see, so the total games I have in the collection left, 403, is how many are there. We'll get to, what I've actually beaten and stuff maybe another time. I'll just say I'm creeping up close to 300. So I'm getting there little by little. Um, but this is the real meat and potatoes here when you're planning out your year. So a lot of this information is kind of from the other page on the spreadsheet. You got the title, you got the hours short and hours long, um, and then you got the system. I think all these is the system that I plan to play it on, which is again relevant because I don't keep everything hooked up, so I like to, actually have to do a little bit of labor to move one system out, replace it, put another one in. The length, instead of using, I kind of use as a shorthand, like, this is a kind of a short game, a medium game, and a long game. Just kind of, again, another data point to let me know, like, if I've got a bunch of long games in a row or a bunch of medium games in a row, I may be in for a little bit more of a slog or whatever the case may be, depending on the game and what it is. So just another thing that I like to add as part of that. These two columns are my wife and daughter. So if there's a particular game that they've really been interested in me playing, I like to mark that down, or that maybe I plan on playing with them for, multiplayer. Again, the genre is over here, and this is the month I plan to start the game, and this is the month I plan to end the game. I want to emphasize here, this is not something that I think people should take so seriously, and I don't take so seriously, that, like, if you don't hit these, marks or whatever, you should be super upset or concerned or worried. Like, it's okay. You're just trying to have fun and trying to enjoy your games that you have. But I find it personally enjoyable to try and mark out the year. And the other thing is, I've never stuck to this. I've been doing this version of the spreadsheet for, I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. And I don't think I've ever stuck to, planning out my year exactly. But I just like doing this to see what might I be able to beat this year, what kind of games am I most interested in, kind of ticking off the collection and that sort of thing. So you can see the top ones are, if it's there, it's because it's an active game. So that was easier to filter by, like, what I'm actively playing. So these are the 4 games that I have right now that I'm actively playing. Again, there are certain rules that people have for themselves. Play one game at a time, focus on that, whatever. I actually used to have that rule for years myself. And I broke it because I found it very limiting, and I realized that I have more fun with games when I can kind of pick up a different game when I'm in a different situation. And so that's more valuable to me. But again, your mileage is going to vary. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. So the idea here is that, hey, I started these games in this month, and I may end them in this month. So plan is, if all goes well, I'll hopefully beat Metal Gear Solid 2 this month. We'll see. And then, kind of so on from here. So I could filter by the month end. Some of this is really ambitious in terms of, like, I have some months, like the April, where I claim I'm going to beat like 6 or 7 games. Probably won't happen, but, they're just kind of seeing what may be possible, putting the games down, putting how long they are. I've got a bunch of short games here, kind of an April shorter, I should say, at least. So, hey, it could happen. It could happen. And ultimately, I just basically game this out for the whole year. So when you're building this stuff out, or at least when I do it, you try and think about, okay, well, what am I going to be doing that month outside of video games? What could be affected by that? Am I really going to be able to play a couple hours a day, maybe more, or maybe less, whatever the case may be. And so this is at a cadence. Actually, I think the hours long for this is well over 2. I think it averages to like 3.5 hours a day. So that's, again, why I think it's overly ambitious. Is it theoretically possible? That's kind of why I kept it in. And I think and hope that maybe it's possible. But, hey, we'll see. As the year goes on, I get into February, I get into March, I look back. What did I say I was going to beat, or what did I want to beat? Maybe this isn't really that possible. Let me adjust it from there. So anyway, like I said, this is planned all the way out to the end of the year. So I've got all the way up to December here. Hey, look, if I could really do this, we're talking about however many that is, 33 games beaten for the year. That would be a personal record for me. My high is 31, and that was during a COVID year where I was staying in. I think that's another thing that I thought was really interesting watching videos by Quality Individual and FemTrooper. They were talking about how many games they've beaten. I think FemTrooper did like 20, Quality did like 30. I beat 19 last year, so that's another thing is like I take long breaks sometimes a little bit more now as I'm getting a little older. So, when I'm on vacation months and like, June, July, maybe, beginning of August, I might not be playing any games. So this ambitious goal may not be realistic in that way. But um, at the bottom here, the ones that are marked for the year, I just put these on because these are games I like to remember myself. Like I'm either kind of floating in and out of playing or I want to get back to, and it's like a major goal. So Ring Fit, it's a fitness goal, right? So the goal is, hey, if I could dedicate myself to this, get, kind of fitness going again. Um, this is a great thing to just keep there and remind myself, like, hey, it's there, dude. Like you could do this. Um, and the two Kirby games, my daughter's a huge Kirby fan, and so probably her favorite games are Kirby games. And so I always have these here because she and I actually have files on these, and they're not actively being played, but we like float in and out of playing them, and just have a little fun with them. So I like to keep them there. That's really all I think I'm going to show from this one for the sake of keeping the video a bit more concise. I'd love to go into in the future kind of the beat game, these other, categories here, games that I've beaten, games that I've like nulled, meaning like I owned them or I own them and I don't plan to beat them or I didn't beat them or whatever the case may be. Oddball old games is like games that I played maybe when I was younger and I beat, but uh, I may want to, um, or like they're not in the collection actively. PRs is possible returns, like games that I beat when I was younger that I might return to again one day, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into everything because I think if I'm going to do some of these videos, I'd like to save some stuff for later. But the last thing I will show here, other than kind of talking about, the collection, what's left in the collection, and um, plans for 2025 is the backloggery itself. So I have had this backloggery for 13 years. I think this level 13 represents how many years I've been here. I've been on the site. Look, everybody has the site that they like or don't like in terms of tracking something, or they just use a spreadsheet. I like to supplement both. I started the spreadsheet, like I said, like 6 or 7 years ago because I realized there were some things that I wasn't getting in backloggery, like, the length of the games and everything that I wanted represented elsewhere. But I still value and really love this website. Now, everything is manual entry. There's no page where, it's like a hub page for whatever game you might be playing. I personally like it. I view this more as like my gaming diary. So this isn't really it is a social media site of sorts, but to me, it's more of just like my own personal kind of diary here. I do like kind of social media style updates, but um, I mostly just do them for myself. The way the site works, I don't even know if anybody ever reads them, and to me, it doesn't matter. It's just kind of like a fun thing for me to update that I personally like doing. Just a little bit of writing for myself. And here you actually could see the whole collection. So I mentioned I'm closing in on 300 games beaten. So completed games on the site is whatever uh, you've actually done like 100% of or more or less. And my goal is really to just beat most games, just to kind of reach the end credits and have an opinion from there. And then the games that are left beaten matches 403 from the other one. So I know I've got every game in the collection on here. Um, yeah, I love backloggery. I'm a big fan of it. Um, I kind of talk about my philosophy of rating games here. I'd love to go into that sometime because I think, everybody should have their own way of how they want to, rate games and talk about games. And I think that makes things interesting. The library is the whole collection. You can kind of go through each system. I don't use the list functionality currently. History shows like what you have picked up over the course of the year. It's kind of meant to be a breakdown. Like I mentioned, one year I had beaten 30 games, 31 games. I think it was this one right here in 2020. Sometimes backloggery has not picked up some of the games I've beaten, so I know this was 31, but whatever. And at the end of the year, you see, hey, I gained 3 more games in the collection than the year prior. This year, I was even. I bought as many as I beat. And if this is a realistic goal that you want to beat the games in your collection, well, at some point, um, you want that number to start going down. And it's been a challenge to have that happen. But whatever. I've really enjoyed. I love video games. It's just um, part and parcel of being a gamer. There's always something new, something interesting out there, and so you can see some of the games I picked up recently. I try to pick up games near the beginning of the year and then just beat them for the rest of the year, and I stick to it. Okay, we'll put it that way. So yeah, this is just a quick overview of kind of how I look at my backlog in general, how I look at planning for the year, and again, on the backs of some of those folks' videos, um, that I really enjoyed. I just thought I'd finally throw my hat in the ring, talk a little bit about how I approach this stuff, and hopefully you found something that might be helpful and worth considering. Especially, I think that folks should really consider how long it might actually take to potentially beat games if they want to beat games. Like if you're just a collector who collects, that's fine. But if you really want to beat the games in your collection, whatever that means to you, I think it's worthwhile to kind of give yourself an idea of how long that actually might take, and hopefully some of the resources that I suggested are helpful for you to making that kind of estimation. And yeah, for me, I guess I know maybe sometime around my late 50s, early 60s, I may be able to say I beat every game that I've more or less wanted to. We'll see. If you watch all the way to the end of this video, I really want to say thank you. Just kind of, you know, thank you to those folks that I mentioned. Um, sort of, uh, thumbs up to them because I think they're kind of putting themselves out there about their gaming experiences has really made me want to finally do it myself. And yeah, thanks everybody for your time. Take care.